Marvel and DC, Peter Parker's brother becomes the strongest hero across the multiverse. Please like, share, and subscribe. Episode 1. Unlocking Azu's template. Jingle bell 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 bell. Bang. A coin-shaped alarm clock was accurately held by a big hand. Sleep for 10 more minutes. 5 more minutes of sleep. 1 more minute of sleep. Again. Hoo. Luya Parker closed her sleepy eyes. Obviously, the 3 alarm clock set did not succeed in waking him up. At this time, a sound of dong 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 footsteps came from outside, and the door opened immediately. Dear Luya, why don't you get up yet? The school bus is leaving soon. Although May is older, she can still run up to the 2nd floor in one breath. Looking at Luya Parker, who was still sleeping soundly, May felt a little helpless, and at the same time, her eyes were also filled with doting. I know, I'll get up right now. Luya stretched out a hand listlessly and forced himself up from the bed. When he came to the bathroom, Luya looked at his tall self in the mirror, still a little unbelievable that so many years had passed since he traveled through time. Ever since I learned that I have a younger brother named Peter Parker, an adoptive father named Ben, and an adoptive mother named May. Luya then understood that he had traveled to the world of Marvel. The tall and burly Luya looks very different from Peter. This is also normal. Luya is actually a child that Ben adopted when he was a child. Of course, for Uncle Ben and Aunt May, Luya Parker is their own child, just like their nephew Peter Parker. In the bathroom, Luya brushed his teeth and looked at himself in the mirror. Then he opened the panel in his mind. Yes, Luya, as a time traveler, of course has its own system. However, the system has been loading for the past 10 years, and it was only today that it was finally unlocked successfully. This is also the reason why Luya is so sleepy today. He stayed up all night last night, silently counting the time to unlock the system. System loading successful. Randomly select templates below. Looking at the images flashing quickly on the system panel, Luya prayed that it would draw a powerful template for him. Please, Brother Tongzi. Template extraction successful. Congratulations to the host for getting the template from the Motherland. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 10%. When the host does something consistent with the behavior of the Motherland, the unlocking level will increase. A powerful force appeared in Luya's body out of thin air, and his body, which was already quite strong, became stronger. Azu's template. Luya was surprised and happy. Although the people of the Motherland have always been called Little Superman, it is undeniable that he is indeed powerful. Only. Do something consistent with Azu's behavior? Do you want me to go to Uea Tiancho? There is no way. When it comes to the character design of Azu, Luya remembers this part most clearly in his mind. Does the system want to be the villain? But in this Marvel world, there are a lot of superheroes. Not to mention, younger brother Peter Parker may become Spider-Man in the near future. Don't let yourself die in the middle, before unlocking the full version of Azu. Forget it, let's take it one step at a time. When I went downstairs, Luya's breakfast for today was already placed on the table, a sandwich and a glass of milk. Young man, I think going to bed early and getting up early is a good virtue, what do you think? Silver-haired Uncle Ben sat on a chair with a newspaper in his hand. I'll be more careful next time, Dad. Luya nodded, grabbed the cup and drank the milk in one gulp. Oh, Luya, slow down, the school bus leaves in 2 minutes, don't choke. Luya nodded again and picked up the sandwich. Then I'll go first, bye. After saying that, Luya opened and closed the door. Bang. Suffer it. Outside the door, Luya was dumbfounded when he looked at the cracked door frame and the door handle in his hand when he closed the door with such force. Damn it, I actually forgot that I have unlocked 10% of Azu's ability. 10% may not seem like much, but it also depends on whose ability it is. As far as the people of the Motherland are concerned, even if it is only 10%, his strength is enough to be called a huge force. I hope the second elder won't be too angry. Seeing that he was about to be late for school, Luya could only put his hand aside, turn around and run towards the street. It's not that I'm afraid of facing my dad's anger, it's just that I'm almost late for school. Yes, that's it. In the house, after Luya closed the door vigorously, a burst of dust fell down like snowflakes. Ben Parker looked at the broken door in disbelief. Is he expressing dissatisfaction to me? He thought Luya was angry at the accusation he had just made. May smiled and comforted. No, Luya has never lost his temper with us, has he? This is a fact, facing Ben and May who adopted him and raised him from childhood to adulthood. Luya truly regards them as his relatives. Besides, Ben and May are originally people of high moral character, which makes it difficult to hate them. Maybe, but who knows what a young man of this age would be thinking. Maybe I should talk to him when I get back tonight. Uncle Ben muttered, and stood up to check the damage to the door. On the street, a young man with a gentle appearance but a thin body was waiting anxiously on the side of the road. The young man is Peter Parker, and the school bus behind him is about to leave. Looking at the figure appearing in the distance, Peter let out a sigh of relief. Finally. Luya, why did you get up later than me today? Generally speaking, Luya rarely wakes up late, and Peter stays in bed. Today it was the other way around, which made Peter a little strange. Well, I had some insomnia last night. Luya made an excuse at random. When passing Peter, seeing that the school bus was about to start, she dragged him onto the school bus. Huh? Peter looked confused. He didn't know what happened. Why did he fly into the car instantly? Fortunately, Peter was a little confused at this stage, so he didn't take what just happened to his heart. Looking at the car full of people, Peter's fearful heart was troubled again. Seeing that every double seat in the car was occupied by someone, he didn't know what to say. Luya doesn't care so much, and the location here is not private, so you can sit down if you want. Looking at the empty seat closest to him, Luya sat on it directly. What is the name of the girl with auburn hair next to her, Liz or Neezy? Forget it, that's not important. Here, Neezy suddenly felt a boy with a scorching breath sitting next to her, and she immediately blushed. Does he like me? Yes, of all the seats, he sat next to me. In fact, this position is just closest to the lure, it's that simple. Episode 2. The sense of oppression from Luya. Here, Peter is still struggling to find his seat. He was very withdrawn in school and hardly talked to any other classmates except Luya. Therefore, no one wants to sit with Peter. In fact, Luya is also very lonely in the eyes of everyone. However, Luya has a strong physique and handsome appearance. He once defeated 3 out-of-school gangsters by himself, so his image is much better. When they got inside the school bus, the short-sighted Peter suddenly discovered the goddess in his mind, Mary Jane, also known as MJ. However, at this time, Jane was nestled in the arms of another boy. She seemed to have just finished talking about an interesting topic, and the smile on her face had not completely faded. However, this scene directly broke Peter's heart. The boy holding Jane's arms was named Thompson, and he had nicknamed Peter Tiny Peter in school. In fact, Peter's academic performance was very good, but it was only because he was labeled as a weak that he was in his current situation. Seeing Peter's confused and helpless look, Thompson hugged Mary Jane tighter. At the same time, he said that sentence. What a puny Peter. As soon as these words came out, the whole school bus was suddenly filled with a happy atmosphere. Whether it's really funny or not, Thompson is very popular anyway and is the star of the school's olive tree team. No one wants to offend such a person. However, when Peter didn't know what to do, a voice sounded. I said. Thompson suddenly felt that the light in front of him had dimmed. Looking up, he saw a burly boy with blonde hair standing in front of him. Thompson, you should take good care of your mouth, otherwise, I don't know if it can make a sound next time. It was Luya who stood up for Peter. After all, he was Peter's brother in name for the rest of his life. How could he pretend to turn a blind eye when he saw his younger brother being bullied? Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 1%. Current Motherland template unlocking degree 11%. Is there such a good thing? Luya was shocked. He just verbally threatened Thompson, but actually directly accelerated the unlocking speed of the Motherland template by 1%. It seems that it is not that difficult to fully unlock it to 100%. This was far beyond Luya's expectations. In his seat, he looked at the lure that was threatening him and the students who were watching the show around him. A vein popped out on Thompson's head, and he didn't choose to endure it. Hey kid. Ignoring the obstruction from Jane beside him, he stood up. Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like this? As he spoke, he grabbed Luya's collar. Seeing that this situation was really about to start a fight, the others suddenly couldn't sit still. This is a school bus. If the bus loses control, it's no joke. Snap. In midair, Thompson's hand was held by a stronger hand. You? Thompson looked at Luya in disbelief. The huge force coming from his wrist was constantly stimulating his nerves. Damn guy. Thompson's face was distorted as if he was suffering from super male syndrome, and his other hand was hitting Luya's face. To be honest, if an ordinary person was punched by Thompson so directly, not to mention going straight to the west, it would at least be a concussion. Never underestimate the power of rugby players. Their physiques are beyond comparison with ordinary people. Beside him, Jane had already begun to scream. She couldn't believe that the boyfriend she had just dated might be about to send her classmate to the hospital. Behind him, Peter clumsily tried to do something. He understood that his brother Luya had only angered Thompson for his own sake. In the front seat of the school bus, Neezy looked at all this with great concern. Click. 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 A heartbreaking sound came, accompanied by Thompson's scream. Ah? What is he doing? Everyone looked at Thompson with a distorted face in confusion. Why did his body suddenly sway? Only a few people close to Thompson knew, including himself. The faint click sound just now actually came from Thompson's wrist, caught by the lure. At this time, Thompson felt that as long as the lure exerted a little more force, his wrist would be completely destroyed. Be careful next time. If you don't keep your mouth shut, it won't be as simple as today. After saying that, Luya let go. Boom. Thompson was relieved and slumped in his seat. At this time, people around him also reacted. In the conflict just now, Luya obviously had the upper hand. Suddenly, there were more whispers around him. How is it possible? This is lightning. How can you give in so easily? Lightning is Thompson's nickname, which represents his lightning-like figure in football games. Normally, football players represent the strongest students in the entire school. Not to mention a popular star player in the school like Thompson. However, this is the fact. Thompson was subdued by Luya with one hand in full view of the public. Wow, how did you do that? Peter looked at his brother in surprise. He didn't understand when his brother became so strong. Although Luya has been very strong since he was a child and is taller than his peers, he is not able to completely defeat Lightning Thompson. Tisk. Luya glanced at his cheap brother and said. There is an old saying in the East. Oh, I know, tell Cece to cover Junjia. Stupid, this is the day when we are separated from each other, so we should look at each other with admiration. Unfortunately, because it was translated into English, a language with no artistic conception, Peter could not understand the meaning of this sentence. He just touched his head unconsciously and looked at the back of Luya, who turned around and was more than half a head taller than him. If I could have such a figure, I might be able to attract the attention of girls. Peter is not a fool, on the contrary, he is very sensitive. When I first got on the bus, the people in the car looked at me and my brother obviously differently. Especially Neezy, who was sitting next to her brother. She was leaning against him like a nymphomaniac at the moment. Peter looked at Jane again, who was overwhelmed by Thompson's anger. In fact, Jane is the white moonlight in Peter's heart. But in fact, she is also a girl with some inferiority complex. Her parents treated her very badly, beating and scolding her at every turn, which made her develop a sensitive heart. Agreeing to be Thompson's girlfriend was just to fit into everyone's circle and not to be isolated. After glancing at Peter, Jane looked at the lure. It would be great if I had a brother like this. In that case, I will definitely not be bullied anymore. Episode 3. Amateur Boxing. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 3%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 14%. A system notification sounded in his mind, and Luya felt that although his body size had not increased again, the strength of his whole body had increased significantly. At the same time, my eyes have become clearer. I was slightly myopic before, but now everything around me has become extremely clear. I don't know when I will be able to unlock Cyclops. Although not as powerful as Superman's heat vision, Cyclops is still a very destructive skill. Anyway, there is no problem in using it to penetrate normal steel. Soon, the school bus arrived and the students walked into the school one after another. Studying time is always boring for Luya, so he spent most of his time sleeping today. After a stressful and exciting day of napping, the school bell rang. Luya packed his things. Today he had his own threat. As expected, Thompson did not come to trouble Peter again. Hi. Suddenly, a blonde girl said hello to Luya. Luya, there is a party at my house tonight, do you want to come? Oh, Gwen. Looking at the blonde girl with a proud figure in front of her, Luya nodded. I'll go when I have time. He couldn't guarantee that he would be able to make it tonight because he had some other plans for the evening. In fact, Luya was still surprised for a long time when he first learned about Gwen's appearance. Their acquaintance was accidental. In the movie version of Spider-Man, there is no version in which MJ and Gwen Stacy appear at the same time. Besides, Gwen shouldn't have shown up in high school. But in the Marvel world, there are countless parallel worlds, so it's not surprising at first glance. However, Luya did not refuse Gwen's invitation. After all, who can say no to a blonde girl with a perky ***? Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 1%. The current Motherland template unlock level is 15%. This works too? Luya looked at the system template dumbfounded. At night, Peter came to Gwen's home alone. In fact, Gwen has a wide range of friends. Although they are not in the same class, many classmates in Luya's class have also been invited by her. The Gwen in this world is actually more like the comic version, heroic and bold. When Peter arrived at Gwen's house, the party was about to start, and many people were busy inside. Suddenly, a figure with red hair caught his attention. "Hi, Jane." Peter seemed to have enlightened himself this time. Instead of standing there stupidly, he took the fruit plate from Jane's hand. "Good evening, Peter." When Jane saw Peter, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. She was sensitive in her heart and naturally understood Peter's feelings for her. However, Peter is too cowardly now and has never dared to express his feelings. "Hey Peter, isn't your brother here today?" At this time, Gwen, wearing hot pants and exuding a hot aura, walked over. She thought Luya would come with Peter, but when she looked around, she only saw Peter's figure. Brother, he said, he will come over later." Gwen's dress really brought huge amounts of shock to Peter's young mind, and this time, he couldn't speak clearly again. "Well, then I'll prepare the party stuff first, you can do whatever you want." Gwen blinked, then turned and left. Seeing Gwen leave, Peter wiped the sweat that had appeared on his forehead with his sleeve. "My brother is really popular with girls. He is not stupid, and he has no friendship with Gwen. Is it because of his brother Luya that he can come to her party?" At this time, Luya was walking on the street, holding a newspaper in his hand. "This is it." Looking at a gate covered with graffiti, Luya compared the address in the newspaper in his hand and finally determined that he had found the place he was looking for. Amateur boxing. In the original movie, Peter came here to make money boxing after becoming Spider-Man. The registration fee is $50. As long as you play for 3 minutes in each game, you can get $3,000 if you lose. In front of the bar, the person in charge took one look at Luya's figure and nodded with satisfaction. The previous guys who came to sign up were so thin that it was difficult to survive even 10 seconds, let alone 3 minutes. Then what if I win? Luya slapped a handful of change on the table. This was all the assets he had accumulated for a long time. There is no way, it turns out he is poor. But now it's better. This kind of black boxing arena is simply the perfect place to earn your first pot of gold. 1. The middle-aged person in charge looked at Luya with disdain. "If you win, get 5,000. In fact, the winning and losing numbers were 3,000, but the person in charge didn't think Luya would win at all, so he just said a number casually. "Very good." Luya nodded with satisfaction. Looking at the back of Luya entering the arena, the middle-aged person in charge shook his head. "Young people today, you have no idea what kind of existence your opponent is." Entering the arena, Luya happened to see the last amateur boxer passing by him. He was lying on a stretcher with injuries all over his body. After being carried out by 2 men in black, he was thrown to the ground like a dead dog. Then look at the ring in the middle of the field, or rather, the cage. A huge figure roared inside, beating its chest crazily. His whole body is covered in fat. Luya roughly estimates that he is over 2 meters tall and weighs at least 300 to 400 kilograms. The audience also shouted wildly. "Fat Hammer, I love you so much. Where's the next show? Let's start the show quickly." The spotlight was given to the host. "Please invite our next challenger." "Excuse me, this player, what is your name?" The spotlight shifted again, showing Luya in front of everyone. Fortunately, Luya bought a Stars and Stripes mask before he came. Now he puts on the mask and no one knows his identity. "I am." Luya thought for a moment. "America's man." The host choked. What the hell is this F***G name? But his duty is not to let the game become cold. Ahem, people of the Motherland. Our new player title is, People of the Motherland. As soon as the words Motherland came out, there seemed to be a magic power, and everyone present seemed to shudder. Hey, it's strange. Why does it feel like the air has suddenly become colder? A native of the Motherland? Why does it sound so cool? Oh haha. The corner of Luya's mouth curled up slightly, it seemed that this name was going to be carried forward in another world. Hey, I said, speed up. Luya entered the scene in 1 second and looked at the host with 3 parts impatience, 5 parts coldness, and 2 parts murderous eyes. With 15% of the strength of the Motherland, his eyes became fierce. Okay. The host didn't know why, he felt panicked. We invite the players from the Motherland to come on stage. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 1%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 16%. Episode 4. People of the Motherland. When Luya stepped into the middle of the ring and looked at the chains wrapped around the ring, he actually became excited. Will the Motherland template affect me? Luya didn't know that if he put on a mask, why didn't he take off the mask? In the ring, the guy known as the Fat Hammer has defeated 5 opponents tonight. And every one of them is either dead or disabled. At the same time, he is also one of the aces in this black boxing ring. Seeing the strong Luya walking into the cage, Fat Hammer's eyes revealed a bloodthirsty light. As the name suggests, Fat Hammerman is as fat as a pig and his fists are like 2 huge amounts of hammers. It can be seen that he has specially practiced kung fu. Boy, are you ready to die? So crazy? The brows under Luya's mask raised. If this is the case, then I won't hold back. It can be said that there are not many good fighters in this kind of boxing ring. Especially this Fat Hammer, who is taking human life as a trifling matter, so there is no need for him to bear the psychological burden. Fat pig, wait for death. Luya held out his thumb and then pointed it down. Ah! Such a provocative scene directly made Fat Hammer lose his mind. Because Luya has already stepped into the ring, according to the rules, the game has begun. I'm going to beat you to death. The scene suddenly burst into cheers. What are you looking for when you come to see Fat Hammer? Of course he was the one hitting people. Boom. Fat Hammer's fat body ran very slowly. After clenching his casserole-sized fists, he hammered Luya's head directly from top to bottom. Good guy. If ordinary people were hit in the face by this punch, they would basically go to see their mother-in-law. This is also the reason why the boxing ring dares to offer such high bonuses. 3,003 minutes, regardless of winning or losing? It's not that easy to get at all. However, these are for ordinary people. Luya now possesses 16% of the ability of the people of the Motherland, and it is impossible to be afraid of this Fat Hammer. Punch me. Luya looked at the fist that was hammering at him and did not dodge. Instead, he punched hard. Click. The sound of bones breaking came. Fat Hammer looked at his limp fist. After a while, the pain began to appear. A scream that was louder than before came out. It really seemed like a pig was being killed. A broken bone is no worse than a skin injury. It can be said that Fat Hammer has never suffered such a serious injury in his time in the black boxing ring. Outside the court, the audience was also stunned. They didn't expect that with such a huge difference in body size, someone could really challenge Fat Hammer head-on and win completely. People of the Motherland. Come on, people of the Motherland. People of the Motherland, smash that fat pig. The audience doesn't care who wins, they just know who is stronger, and they will follow it. Luya listened to the growing cheers around him, opened his hands. This feeling seems wonderful? Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 4%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 20%. An even greater energy appeared in Luya's body, and his eyes began to flash slightly with red light. Soon. Maybe at least 30%, you can unlock the Cyclops by yourself. On the other side, Feijue looked at the people around him who originally supported him. They all turned against him. Instead, they supported Luya, and his eyes began to turn red. No. I am the strongest. Amidst the roar, Fat Hammer jumped up after a short run-up. Crush you to death. Under the force of his jump, the whole arena made an overwhelmed sound of creak, creak, creak. Luya raised his head and looked at the dark top of his head. Regardless of the exclamations of the audience outside the venue, he remained motionless. Is he crazy? No, Feijue Xiao said it was 400 pounds, but he didn't hide? I originally thought there was a great new guy coming, but who knew it would just be like this? Boom. The Fat Hammer finally came down, but unlike his expectation of crushing the lure with his weight, he found that he actually stopped floating in midair. Fat pig, you are quite heavy. Below him, Luya's voice came. This time, Feijue was finally afraid. He didn't understand that with his own weight and the inertia of his fall, could a person really catch this kind of force? Unfortunately, these were his last thoughts. In the hands of Luya, although the Fat Hammer is huge, it is just a larger toy. I saw Luya bending back, and then... Boom. The Fat Hammer was smashed onto the ring with all his strength. In just an instant, Fat Hammer lost consciousness and passed out. And as he landed, the entire arena finally couldn't support it and collapsed to one side. Ah? Everyone looked at the dusty arena, and their hearts were filled with shock. All I can say is that this ticket is worth it. When the dust dispersed, Luya had opened the chain and walked out. It was as if the battle just now was just an insignificant warm-up for him, and he didn't even break out a drop of sweat. Of course, while Luya's martial arts value amazed everyone, it was also noticed by a few interested people. At this time, among the excited crowd, a middle-aged man's voice came from the earphones of a man in black. Check his background and see if we can use him. Yes, boss. Luya didn't know that his performance tonight had attracted the attention of some people, and he was being targeted as a result. But even if he knew, he wouldn't care. Although his physical strength cannot be said to be invincible now, he is at least invulnerable. Luya estimated that his body should be able to carry ordinary firearms. Looking at the collapsed arena, Luya shook his head helplessly. I originally wanted to play more games. After all, the person in charge at the door said that for every win, I would get 5,000 yuan. But now it seems that it is obviously impossible. However, 5,000 yuan is not a lot. In this day and age, 5,000 yuan can even buy a pretty good second-hand luxury car. When I walked up to the person in charge who was taking a nap, I really didn't know how he could still sleep because there was so much noise inside. Wake up, it's time to pay. Huh? It's over? Seeing the intact lore standing in front of him, the middle-aged person in charge looked surprised. This guy is actually not dead? Did Fat Hammer change his gender today? He knows that since Fat Hammer appeared, no one who challenged him has ever been able to walk through this door standing upright. He also made a lot of money from it. After all, if people are dying, how can they come to pay for themselves? He looked at Luya's clothes, which were about to burst with muscles, and then took a look at the security guards in the venue. The middle-aged person in charge muttered and reluctantly took out 10 green tickets. Now, here's your bonus tonight. Tisk. Luya sneered and came to life again. Episode 5. An unexpected surprise. The middle-aged person in charge looked pained, as if he had suffered a huge loss. I remember, we agreed to give 5,000 yuan if we win the game, right? There was a hint of coldness in Luya's voice. However, the middle-aged person in charge had no idea what was going on inside or what kind of existence he had provoked. In his opinion, he is willing to give you 1,000 because of your strong figure. If it were someone else, haha, 100 would be nice. Just say whether you want it or not, and forget it if you don't want it. As he said that, the middle-aged person in charge retracted his hand and actually wanted to swallow the 1,000 yuan. He has been in this boxing ring for a long time, who hasn't seen him? Judging from the appearance of the boy in front of me, it's impossible that the total of his clothes would exceed 200. Bang. You won't accept this nonsense and want to steal my money? There was only a loud noise, and the horizontal counter in front of him was punched in half by Luya. Gudu. The middle-aged person in charge swallowed hard as he looked at the horrifying scene in front of him. You are a mutant? The middle-aged person in charge follows the boss behind the boxing ring, so he still knows a little bit about the super abilities in this world. However, Luya doesn't care what he is thinking, everyone has to pay the price for their actions. I said. Luya pulled his star-spangled flag mask up a little. You just made me feel very bad. Don't you think I should pay some mental damages? He emphasized the word a little bit very hard. How dare the person in charge say no at this time? His legs were trembling. I understand. Anyway, let's get rid of this evil star first, and then report it to the boss. Snap. Luya snapped his fingers and said with a smile. I just like to deal with cheerful people. Then, feel free to come up with 100 or 80,000. He just saw a box full of money next to the person in charge. Crack. How many? The person in charge glanced at the box next to him, and the 100,000 yuan in it was supposed to be paid to Fat Hammer. He couldn't imagine how he would be manipulated by Fat Hammer if he lost his money. However, before he could think about it, a big hand passed over him and grabbed the cash box. This is your apology to me. Luya opened the box and revealed the 100,000 yuan inside. Yes, there are more than I thought. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased 3%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 23%. Luya looked at the prompts given by the system. Why does this count? Am I not taking something that belongs to me? You can't take this money away. The middle-aged person in charge was really anxious this time. His fat body quickly rushed towards the money box in Luya's hand. Give it back to me quickly. If Fat Hammer finds out, he will kill us. The person in charge didn't care whether Fat Hammer would kill the young man in front of him. But if he loses his money, he will never get any good results. Bang. The door to the boxing ring suddenly opened, and several bodyguards in black appeared from inside. Seeing this scene, the person in charge knew that tonight's game might end early and the fat hammer would come out. As a result, he became even more eager to snatch the money box back from Luya. It's a pity that he is just an ordinary person. In front of Luya, who has 23% of Azu's power, he is undoubtedly as fragile as a baby. Seeing that he couldn't get it back, the person in charge decided to leave it alone. Boy, do you know you're in trouble? Wait. He shouted towards the infield. Master Chue. Master Chue. Hammer. The call stopped suddenly, and a scene that he would never forget in his life appeared before him. He saw that fat hammer, who had an invincible image in his mind, was like a dead pig being dragged along by several bodyguards. Looking in their direction, it turned out to be the backyard of the boxing ring. And there, the middle-aged person in charge knew that all the boxers who were seriously injured and lost their ability would be pulled there. He turned his head with difficulty, and all he saw was a Stars and Stripes mask and a slightly raised face. No wonder he is so confident. No wonder he ended tonight's game so quickly. The middle-aged person in charge understood that Fat Hammer had been defeated by the guy in front of him. Didn't you notice that the bodyguards all looked frightened when they saw this guy? Hee hee. He smiled dryly and silently moved away from the exit. Your boxing gym is good. I'll come again next time. Luya put the cash box on his waist and left the boxing ring gracefully. As the saying goes, it is difficult for a rich man to be a man without money. Even the system can't conjure money out of thin air for you, you still have to rely on your own efforts. Luya looked into the depths of this boxing ring. If I can get this boxing ring, can't I just stay at home and make money? But as soon as this idea appeared, Luya shook his head. I'm not a robber. Besides, this is a society governed by law. How can I rob other people's things? Walking on the street, it was already late at night. Luya suddenly remembered that he seemed to have forgotten a party. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm afraid the party at Gwen's house has already ended. In fact, high school is no better than college. Even if students hold a party, it usually won't be held until very late unless the party has some other purpose. When he got home, Luya looked at the brand new door handle and the repaired door frame and sighed. Oh, I don't know what Dad should say to me. I broke the door today and came home so late. Luya was already thinking about how to explain. Squeak. The door opened, and it was my mother, May, who opened the door. Oh Luya, you're finally back. It's getting very late. Oh yes, Luya was still thinking about what excuse to make. However, Luya's tangled expression had another meaning in the eyes of her mother, May. Oh, don't be embarrassed, my boy. What? What's the excuse? Luya was a little confused. You know, it's not a shame to fall in love with a girl at this age. Why does it seem like there's something wrong with the style of painting? Luya was a little confused, but he guessed that Peter must have said something for him in front of his mother. Your father is already asleep. Keep your voice down when you go upstairs so as not to wake him up. The white-haired May looked at her burly son lovingly, liking him no matter how much he looked at him. Although her husband said that he would teach Luya a lesson tonight, she knew that her son had always been obedient. Today's behavior is just a small thing that happens to a normal adolescent young person. Okay Mom, good night. Luya breathed a sigh of relief, but he really couldn't bear to lie. Episode 6. Gwen's invitation. All the way upstairs, Luya entered his bedroom and gently closed the door. The 100,000 yuan won in the boxing ring cannot be used openly. Ben is an extremely upright person. If he knew that his son's money actually came from the black boxing ring, he would definitely be very sad. Luya put the money under his bed to prepare for future emergencies. The next day, Midtown High School. Luya was walking on campus when suddenly a golden figure blocked his way. Luya, why didn't you come to my party last night? Gwen, with blonde hair, stood in front of Luya. Her expression seemed to be very dissatisfied with Luya for releasing her pigeon yesterday. It's no wonder that Gwen is different from other girls. She is hot, sexy, and generous. Other students can also see this from the luxury of Gwen's house yesterday. The comparison of Luya is not very clear. The current Marvel world is obviously somewhat different from the movie universe I have watched. Well, I was delayed by something last night. Luya thought for a while and gave the simple answer. How can a woman or anything else be more important than becoming stronger? Gwen was obviously not very satisfied with this answer. That's it? She looked at Luya, who had an indifferent expression on his face even though he was explaining, and the corners of his mouth curved into a nice curve. Isn't this reason enough? Luya glanced at Gwen in surprise. What if? Alright. Gwen nodded, but the excitement in her eyes flickered even more. In school, Gwen has many suitors, and it can be said that there are all kinds of suitors. But none of these people could catch Gwen's eyes. Because in Gwen's eyes, these people who pursue themselves are either glib and self-righteous, or brainless fools. Of course, there were also people who deliberately approached me with a cold persona, and then their true colors were revealed under my casual teasing. But Luya is different. Gwen looked at Luya's expression. His self-confidence and leisurely manner are truly engraved in his bones, and he is not just pretending to attract himself. And this also aroused Gwen's strong curiosity. She didn't understand why the personalities of Luya and Peter, two brothers from the same family, were so different. So, she responded with a smile. Okay, Luya, I wonder if you are free to go shopping with me tonight. Faced with Gwen's invitation, Luya felt that there was no need to refuse, so he agreed. He also wanted to know more about the girl who was almost certain to die in the original work. At this time, Peter Parker, the future Spider-Man and Luya's cheaper brother, was walking by listlessly. His sad expression was like that of a broken dog. In fact, just this morning, Peter, sitting on the school bus, was still regretting and wondering why Mary Jane didn't come today. As a result, when the school bus was halfway through, he saw Mary Jane, sitting in Thompson's new car. At this moment, Peter's lovelorn mood reached its peak, even though he had never been in love with Jane. He simply thought that maybe if he had a car, he would be able to please Jane. It's a pity that my family is not rich, especially this morning, Uncle Ben told everyone that he is unemployed. Even a second-hand sports car costs several thousand in this era. This is not a price that an ordinary family can afford. Moreover, at this stage, Peter has not been bitten by the chosen spider. Even if he wants to make money part-time, he does not have the ability. Is that your brother? Gwen looked at Peter walking by and asked Luya. Of course this was a question he asked knowingly. Looking at the sad look on his cheap brother's face, Luya felt a little speechless in his heart. He could guess that Peter looked like this because of Mary Jane. But although Mary Jane lived next door to his house, Peter rarely talked to her. Although he was close to the water, he missed this opportunity. Besides, Luya didn't think Mary Jane was such a good girl. Peter's obsession with her is entirely the result of white moonlight in his mind. In fact, Jane's purpose in agreeing to be Thompson's girlfriend was very simple. She just wanted to avoid being ostracized by Thompson's circle. At the same time, due to domestic violence, a wealthy star like Thompson can indeed give Mary Jane more security. Luya shook his head with some hatred. If he hadn't become Spider-Man in the future, maybe Peter and Jane would never have a relationship again. But you are thin, can you exercise? Just like Luya himself, although he is naturally taller, he is actually not very strong at the beginning. It's just that Marvel America's current situation makes Luya always have a sense of crisis in his heart, so he exercises all the year round, so he has a strong physique. In fact, the school olive tree team once offered Luya an olive branch. If this was a normal world, maybe Luya would actually choose to be a rugby player. It's just a pity that the Marvel world is a world full of superpowers. In fact, ordinary people are not much different from ants. Just like when the Avengers faced off against Thanos, Thanos snapped his fingers and half of the world's population disappeared. Returning to his thoughts, Luya also saw Thompson driving Mary Jane into the school in his car. This time, he also determined the specific reason for Peter's sadness. Sure enough, I guessed right, it was really Mary Jane's fault. In class, Luya looked at the data on the system panel. Unlocking degree of Motherland template, 23%. TSK, this progress is still a bit slow. Luya was thinking about where to go to quickly unlock progress. It's just that Luya didn't think of any good solution until school was over. It's really embarrassing at this point in time. The so-called light and darkness coexist, black and white coexist. Before Peter became Spider-Man, there were few supervillains in New York. Forget it, the teacher told me during class today that I will visit the General Electronics Laboratory Company tomorrow. If I remember correctly, that's where the chosen spider that bit Peter was. The only thing Luya is worried about now is whether his presence will incite the wings of the butterfly, causing the chosen spider to not bite Peter. However, Luya didn't think the problem was big. After all, he hadn't interfered too much in Peter's life over the years. Suddenly, there was a burst of exclamation from the students in the class. Wow, she's so hot. It would be nice if you were my girlfriend. Dream on, I heard that no one in our school has been able to catch up with Gwen Stacy. Gwen specially changed into a suspender skirt for her date in the evening. Paired with her blonde hair, her whole body seemed to be bathed in a layer of brilliance. Episode 7. Conflict in the classroom. At the end of the classroom, Lightning Thompson, who was just about to go to the football field for training, stopped. "Thompson, what's wrong?" Mary Jane also stopped. She had been invited by her new boyfriend to watch his football training game. Following Thompson's gaze, she saw Gwen. At this moment, Mary Jane's expression turned cold. No one wants their boyfriend to like another girl. Although Mary Jane accommodated Thompson in everything, she was afraid of being ostracized after losing Thompson. But she can't bear her boyfriend staring at other girls in front of her. So, she immediately stood in front of Thompson and angrily blocked his view. Thompson also came back to his senses, an embarrassed expression flashed across his face, but then it was hidden. He smiled lightly and hugged Mary Jane gently. "Hey Jane, you know." Thompson's face was still smiling, but his voice was cold. "You can't interfere in my affairs. We agreed a long time ago. Have you forgotten?" Thompson didn't have deep feelings for Jane, he just admired Cinderella. She is just a beautiful girl born in a poor family. Do she really think she is a white swan? Thompson didn't know how hurtful his words were. After hearing these words, Mary was obviously stunned for a moment. Then, her eyes turned red, and she was a little doubtful at this moment whether her choice to be Thompson's girlfriend was really the right choice. Such a humiliation, no matter how much Mary Jane deceived herself, she couldn't pretend she couldn't hear it. So, she broke away from Thompson's arms. "Thompson, you be ********D. However, Thompson just spat and then pulled her back into his arms. "What, have you forgotten what I bought you in the past 2 days? How can there be such a good thing if you just want to leave after getting the benefits?" Hearing this, Mary Jane, who was still struggling, stopped, and she closed her eyes in pain. "These are all things that I have been mentally prepared for, right?" This scene was seen by Peter from a distance, and his eyes turned red when he saw that the goddess in his heart was being bullied. Peter didn't know where the courage came from, and he suddenly stood up. "Thompson. You are not allowed to bully Jane." Peter walked up to Thompson in a few steps and stared at Thompson hard. Suddenly, the whole class's attention was attracted to Peter, even Gwen was no exception. Thompson was really startled when he was yelled at for no reason. However, when he saw that the person yelling at him was insignificant Parker, he became filled with anger and embarrassment. Was he actually threatened by such a trash? Thompson looked at Peter, who lowered his head halfway, with a dangerous light in his eyes. Next to her, Mary Jane showed a somewhat grateful look. When she was most embarrassed, Peter was willing to stand up and speak for herself, which moved Mary Jane's heart. However, she was horrified to see her boyfriend grabbing Peter's collar. "Pong!" Thompson dragged Peter and pressed him against the door. With a smile on his face. "Oh, look. Look at our poor little Peter." Thompson used his arms so hard that he actually pulled Peter a few centimeters off the ground. "Remember Peter? Mary Jane is my girlfriend. If you dare to interfere in my affairs with him again, I will let you know what cruelty is." Bang! Thompson slapped Peter hard again, knocking Peter against the door. "Aren't you going to help your brother?" At this time, Gwen walked to Luya's side. "This is a necessary step for him to grow up," Luya said calmly. "Peter's strength comes from the hardships he faced while growing up. After he becomes Spider-Man, he will naturally return everything today to Thompson. As long as Thompson doesn't go too far, Luya doesn't plan to take care of it. After all, for Peter's excessive kindness that makes him a loser, he actually hates the fact that iron cannot become steel. Well, you two brothers are really weird." Gwen was non-committal about Luya's statement. However, Thompson's next words angered Luya. "I think only your cowardly Uncle Ben can teach you such a cowardly waste, ha 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 ha." The anger in his heart made Thompson lose his mind and say this. However, Ben's status is irreplaceable, whether in others or in Luya's heart. Especially Luya, who was an orphan in his previous life, has a deeper feeling for his father Ben Parker in this life. Ben and May's selfless love, meticulous care for themselves, etc., make Luya unable to bear the insults to them. How dare he? How dare he? Next to Thompson, Peter, who was closer to him, had already jumped up in anger and pounced on him. "You are not allowed to insult Uncle Ben." Bang! Thompson looked at Peter, who was rushing toward him, smiled contemptuously, and pushed him away. Under this push, Peter's thin body directly knocked open the classroom door and fell out of the classroom. Mary Jane couldn't stand it any longer. She struggled internally and wanted to help Peter up. However, seeing her boyfriend Thompson's domineering expression, she once again gave up the idea in frustration. She didn't want to endure the violence anymore. If she offended Thompson, she would receive violence that was more hurtful than a beating, which was the cold violence from most of her classmates. Thompson laughed. He showed off his strength wantonly, but actually wanted to get more attention. He glanced at Gwen out of the corner of his eye, wanting to see Gwen's reaction. However, what was impressed on his eyelids was an increasingly bigger fist. Boom. Wow. With one punch, Thompson couldn't control his figure and staggered to the side, knocking over several tables at the same time. You. Thompson got up from the ground and looked at his attacker fiercely. At this time, the left side of his face had become swollen. And this is already the result of Luya's hand. Otherwise, with Luya's current strength, I'm afraid Thompson's head would be blown open with one punch. Before Thompson could speak harshly, Luya took the lead and said in a cold voice. I remember I reminded you to pay attention to what you said, but it seems you didn't take my reminder to heart. Everyone in the classroom looked at them again. No, Lightning and Luya are going to fight? Lightning is Thompson's nickname, which praises his quickness on the football field. But why does it seem to me that Thompson has suffered a loss? No way, isn't Thompson the strongest boy in our school? Didn't Thompson already suffer a loss on the school bus last time? I thought it was an accident. Although Luya once had a record of single-handedly challenging 3 gangsters outside the school, no one thought that Thompson would be unable to do this. Gwen looked at Luya, who had a frosty face, and licked her lips. She has never seen Luya like this before. Every time she bumps into Luya outside the classroom, he always looks paralyzed. This time, her curiosity about Luya became even more intense. Episode 8. Blocking the road. Thompson thought of the scene on the school bus yesterday, and now that he thought about it, his wrist still seemed to be aching. Haha, am I right? Thompson looked at Luya provocatively, thinking that he was knocked down just because of a sneak attack. If it were a head-to-head battle, he was confident that he would not lose to anyone in the school. Hearing that Thompson was still arrogant and refused to admit his mistake, Luya's expression became even colder. In his eyes, there seemed to be a red light flashing, and a heat was gathering. Without unlocking the system, he actually unlocked Cyclops automatically. The endless murderous intention is soaring, and Luya has the urge to directly blast Thompson into ashes with his laser eyes. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 2%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 2%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 3%. On the system panel, as Luya's murderous intention surges, the unlocking degree of the Motherland template is also increasing. Eventually, the value stopped at 30%. Skills unlocked by Motherland template Cyclops. The system gave a clear prompt and Cyclops was successfully unlocked. In fact, the 30% unlocking level is not enough to unlock Cyclops, but due to Luya's murderous intention, Cyclops was unlocked in advance. At this time, Thompson suddenly felt a huge amount of killing intent coming towards him. Strangely enough, he had never believed in such a thing as murderous intent before. But at this moment, he really felt it, right in Luya's eyes. A drop of cold sweat dripped from his head, and the two of them fell into an eerie silence for a moment. Thompson didn't know it yet, but at this moment, his life was all about Luya's thoughts. What are you doing? There was such a big movement in the classroom that a student finally called the teacher over. Luya took a deep look at Thompson and dissipated a lot of heat accumulated in his eyes. Killing people in front of everyone is something Luya is not willing to do unless it is absolutely necessary. In the midst of everyone's discussion, this farce seemed to have ended just like that. Thompson walked out of the classroom in a cold sweat and headed to the football field. Behind him, Mary Jane followed silently. Before leaving the classroom, she turned and looked at Luya with inexplicable eyes. But at this time, Gwen was already standing beside Luya, and even held his arm. The two of them looked as intimate as a couple. Feeling the softness and warmth from his arms, even Luya couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Hee, I thought you were really an ice cube and had no interest in women. The strange look on Luya's expression was noticed by Gwen, and her eyes showed a cunning light. She did this on purpose, just to see Luya's reaction. Judging from Luya's reaction, it turns out that his charm has not lost its effectiveness after all. Luya coughed lightly. I am not sexual and cold, so how can I really not have feelings for all girls? But his expression didn't change. I never said that. Why, are you disappointed? Gwen was surprised by Luya's frankness, and at the same time, her interest in Luya deepened. Of course not. Do you still remember our agreement this morning? Of course, I have time tonight. Where do you want to go shopping? The two of them linked their arms together, and their intimate look quickly attracted the attention of the whole class. Gwen turned out to be looking for lures. Oh my god. Is Gwen about to be taken down by Luya? Isn't this strange? A girl next to me said. A boy as strong and handsome as Luya must be very popular. In fact, although Luya rarely talks to other people, his popularity among girls has always been high. He is really handsome to a certain extent, and he can naturally attract the attention of fans without having to do anything with the lure. Beside the classroom, a red-haired girl looked at the sweet Luya and Gwen, and felt infinite resentment in her heart. The lure is obviously mine. Liz Allen, or rather Neezy, thought as she looked at the backs of Luya and Gwen. Brother. Peter returned to the classroom and watched Luya punch Thompson away, not to mention how comfortable he felt. However, being raised by Ben, Peter also developed an inferiority complex towards his brother Luya's strength. It would be great if I was as strong as my brother. Peter made a wish again, but unfortunately no magic lamp responded to him. Luya looked at his cheap brother and sighed. Peter, remember to cover for me when Dad asked me where I was going at night. With that said, Luya and Gwen turned and left. Peter opened his mouth and swallowed back what he wanted to say. Night, street. What Gwen called shopping was not the shopping that Luya imagined. In fact, this was Gwen's intention. She knows the situation of Luya's family. Unlike her father, who is the police chief, Luya's father is just an ordinary worker. Therefore, she thoughtfully did not ask Luya to buy anything for her. In fact, Luya is not short of money at this time, but of course he will not take the initiative to say so. Gwen's way of shopping is very unique, and she specially chooses dark alleys to walk. Luya looked at Gwen, who was in a good mood, and reminded. I think your family will tell you that there may be some dark sides in places like these. Of course Gwen knew this, especially since this was the Nico community, and her father had specifically reminded her not to come here. However, after seeing how strong Luya was today, she was no longer so afraid of these things. Although Gwen in this world has a father who is a police chief, she has developed a rebellious character. She pursues excitement and longs for those scenes on TV where superheroes punish evil. So today, with the company of Luya, she dared to go shopping and go to these dark places. Okay, as you like. Luya agreed, assuming that there was really a robbery or something like that. Just treat it as making money tonight. Said Chow 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 has arrived. While the two were talking, a figure that almost blended into the darkness suddenly appeared. Yo, there's a chick here? Pure black skin, the only color difference is his teeth shining under the dim street lights. Nico walked out of the corner wearing clothes that looked expensive but were dirty and ill-fitting. There is also a dagger in his hand. Hand over the money. Then this little girl stays, and you can get out. This Nico has good racial talent and is quite tall, almost the same as Luya. Did you really get robbed? Luya raised his eyebrows and looked at Gwen beside him. Gwen's face looked a little unnatural at this time. In fact, she just said that she was still quite scared if she really encountered a robbery. This is a common problem among many young people. Even though they know it is not good, they still do it. Patting Gwen's hand gently. Don't worry. Episode 9. Cyclops shows off its power. Looking at Nico with a knife in front of him with great interest, Luya only felt a little funny. Letting go of Gwen's hand, Luya walked to Nico in a few steps. In Luya's eyes, Nico didn't see the slightest panic, and now, it was his turn to panic. Hand over the money. Nico emphasized again, but facing the unafraid Luya, his words were so unconfident. When a person cannot be seen through by others, he will naturally arouse the fear of others. Nico had this mentality at this time. Looking at Luya's hands in his pockets, he was very worried that Luya would suddenly take out a handful of truth from them. So, he took action first. Go to hell. Nico had a fierce look on his face. Careful. Gwen looked at Luya, who was still dumbly not taking his hands out of his pockets, and reminded him in horror. She felt a little regretful at this time. Why did she have to take these small roads? If he didn't have to take these paths, Luya wouldn't have. Here, seeing that the knife was about to pierce his abdomen, Luya was still walking leisurely. An attack at this speed would be like a turtle crawling for him now. Turning sideways, Luya easily dodged Nico's knife attack, and then kicked out. Puff. For such a real scumbag, Luya didn't bother to say anything to him. And even Luya's random kick now is definitely not something that an ordinary person can bear. I saw that Nico was like a cannonball. Under the impact of this huge amount, the whole person shrank into a ball and flew more than 10 meters away. Then, it crashed heavily into a pile of trash cans. Ho, ho, ho. Intermittent gasping sounds came from the garbage pile. With just one blow from Luya, Nico completely lost his ability to move. Looking at Nico, who couldn't get up for a long time, Luya shook his head boredly. He didn't bother to check if there was anything valuable on this man. What was the difference between digging things out of this dirty Nico and digging through the trash can? Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 2%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 32%. The system prompt appeared again, and the unlocking degree increased by 2%. Looking back, Gwen had just come out of her panic. Faced with Luya's great courage, she was shocked again. Gwen was already surprised that Luya could punch Thompson away in the classroom. But she found that she still underestimated the lure, and kicked someone who was at least dozens of kilograms more than 10 meters away. Is this really something a normal person can do? At this moment, Gwen thought of a lot of things in her mind, such as superheroes, the nighttime night Bateman, etc., all appeared one after another. There are DC comics in the Marvel world, and Gwen has also read them, like Superman and Batman. Just when she wanted to say something, a deep voice came from the corner again. As expected of a guy who can defeat Fat Hammer easily, the boss did not misjudge you. As soon as he finished speaking, a white man with a sinister face appeared, and beside him stood 2 black bodyguards. Come with me, the boss wants to meet you. The sinister man was talking to himself, as if the boss in his mouth was such an amazing person. Fat Hammer? Luya recalled in an instant that the person coming must be related to the black boxing ring before. So they are seeking revenge for severely injuring Fat Hammer? Or is it because I robbed their money? In fact, it stands to reason that Luya did something extreme in this matter. But, who cares? Looking at the sinister man and the other 2 black men, Luya chuckled and said, "What if I don't go with you?" Luya was a little surprised by who gave them the confidence to speak to him in such a tone even after they saw him kicking away the Nico just now. But soon, the sinister man gave his confidence. Lure. Gwen's voice came from behind, and at this time, a person who looked like a bodyguard was pointing a pistol at her. Damn it. Luya's face darkened, he was too careless. Since having the Motherland template, Luya feels that everything is under his control. Gradually, I lowered my guard against these ordinary people. Originally, with his strengthened body, ordinary people's attacks on him could be said to be like scratching an itch. Even if it's a firearm, as long as it doesn't hit a vital point like the eye, it won't be a big problem. Even with the unlocking of the Motherland template, eyes are no longer the weakness of the lure. But he forgot that in many movie novels, the protagonist's weakness is often not the original protagonist, but the protagonist's relatives and friends. I never thought I would make such a stupid mistake. Luya smiled to himself. Looking at Luya's expression, the sinister man also showed a proud look. How about it, just meet the boss with me, and I'll make sure that girl is fine. Gwen saw that she had become a hostage threatening Luya, and she didn't know where the courage came from. She kicked the black man next to her in the lower body in an attempt to escape. However, unlike the Nico just now, this black bodyguard in a suit and tie is obviously a professional. He dodged Gwen's kick and smashed the butt of his gun into her head. Fortunately, Gwen was quite agile, so she didn't suffer much damage. Haha, why, do you still want to struggle? The sinister man realized that he was sure to defeat Luya and the 2 of them, and his tone became more and more relaxed. At this time, Luya looked at Gwen, who was almost injured, and was extremely angry in his heart. Court death. Deciding not to hold back anymore, Luya turned directly to glare at the bodyguard holding her hostage next to Gwen. The black bodyguard didn't pay attention and was very disdainful. What, is getting angry useful? Staring at me is useful? Is it possible that you can still stare me to death? However, his disdainful expression was soon replaced by fear. A red light appeared in Luya's eyes, and a large amount of heat was gathered. What's this? All this happened in an instant. Before the black bodyguard could have any other thoughts, 2 red rays of light shot out from Luya's eyes. Wow. Under Luya's anger, the laser beam swept directly over the hands of the black bodyguard, and then his body with lightning speed. Ta. 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 Like rain, the black bodyguard's body fell all over the ground. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 5%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 37%. Well. Similarly, this scene was also seen by Gwen and the sinister man. Especially Gwen, she was right next to the black bodyguard, and she could feel the power of Luya's laser light even more. Is he really Superman? Gwen's eyes were filled with an inexplicable look. There is surprise, curiosity, shock, and obsession. Episode 10. Confused even if I kill you. Here, after Luya killed the black bodyguard with a laser eye, he felt a sense of relief all over his body. Maybe I really have some potential to be a native of the Motherland? At this time, seeing the powerful Luya, the sinister man no longer had the arrogance he had just now. He can shoot lasers from his eyes. Is he a devil? Although the Prey man knows that there are mutants in this world, it is limited to the extent of his knowledge. In his understanding, the abilities in the variant are basically like having infinite strength, shooting lasers from the eyes, etc. This should be beyond the scope of human beings, right? Seeing that Luya was staring at him and his eyes began to flash red, the sinister man quickly smiled flatteringly and said, misunderstandings are all misunderstandings. Seeing that Luya didn't respond, he quickly continued to beg for mercy. As long as you let us go, everything today will be treated as if it never happened. How about that? They have investigated clearly and found out that Luya is a student at Zhongqing High School. Maybe they can deceive him. The sinister man thought that as soon as he went back, he would report everything about Luya to his boss. However, Luya did not show any expression for his begging for mercy. Heat gathered in the eyes, and then 2 red laser rays shot out. The light swept past the sinister man and the 2 black bodyguards beside him. Foolish, I'll kill you. Today is the day when no one really knows what happened. Unlocking degree of Motherland template increased by 3%. Unlocking degree of Motherland template 40%. Cool. Luya himself had to admit that it was no wonder that the people of the Motherland liked to use laser eyes to sweep away everything in front of them when they disagreed. Because, this is really cool. The sinister man thought he would be soft-hearted and let them go. How could that be possible? For a guy like this who doesn't seem to be a good guy at first glance, Luya doesn't feel any psychological burden at all when killing him. Wow, that's cool. Gwen seemed to have completely gotten over the fright at this time. She walked to Luya and leaned lightly on his shoulder. Luya raised his eyebrows. Aren't you scared? Luya remembered that in the original movie, after Peter became Spider-Man, he only showed his extraordinary power in front of his classmates for the first time and tortured Thompson, but he was already regarded as a monster by the whole class. Why are you afraid? Gwen asked with a smile. Didn't you save me today, my hero? By the way. Gwen looked into Luya's eyes curiously. Are you one of those legendary scavengers in the dark, or a superhero who silently fights crime? So what's your superhero title? Cyclops? Gwen asked a series of questions, which also represented the excitement in her heart at this time. In a family of police chiefs with strict dogma, Gwen developed a deviant character. Of course, this is only in her father's opinion. Hearing Luya say that he had no intention of becoming a superhero and that he had no so-called title, Gwen's eyes dimmed for a moment. But then, she said enthusiastically. But even if you don't want to be a superhero, you have to give yourself a title. Your eyes can emit lasers, why not call them Cyclops? Looking at the overly excited Gwen, Luya knew that if she didn't give him a name, she probably wouldn't let him go. Of course, Luya would not give himself a name like Cyclops. After all, someone in this world has already taken this name. Homelander. Luya said the ready-made name. A native of the Motherland? Gwen repeated. You also said you don't want to be a superhero, but your name means you're a super decent hero, right? Then I'm afraid you will be disappointed. Luya secretly complained that the real people of the Motherland may appear to be righteous, but in fact they are dark and vicious in their hearts. Of course, he wouldn't just explain it to Gwen. As he was talking, Luya's ears suddenly moved. Well, it seems someone is coming? The Motherland template with an unlock level of 40% is now showing its complete power, such as super hearing. Luya can feel that any sound within a radius of 1 kilometer at this time can be heard clearly as long as he wants to. Moreover, beyond a radius of 1 kilometer, he can also hear many sounds that ordinary people can't hear, it's just that they don't sound so detailed. For example, Luya heard 2 people approaching here 100 meters away. What's wrong? Gwen looked at Luya, who suddenly concentrated his attention, and asked. Someone is coming. Luya briefly stated his findings. Gwen looked around and found nothing. When she was wondering, a man and a woman suddenly poked their heads out from under a rusty staircase nearby. Their black hair and yellow skin are distinctive features. Asian? Luya was a little surprised. After living for so long, he rarely saw Asians. The 2 of them looked like siblings. The clothes they wore looked old, but they were very clean and tidy. From this, Luya judged. Are you from China? The 2 siblings were obviously startled by Luya's sudden voice. The girl who looked like an older sister took a step forward and blocked her younger brother in front of her. Very defensive. My sister didn't show any surprise when she looked at the corpses on the ground. It seemed that she was used to it. Instead, she saw Luya and Gwen, two new faces who obviously didn't belong here, and she wondered. Who are you? I've never seen you in Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen? Luya was stunned. Could this be the legendary darkest area in New York in Marvel? It's no wonder that the sinister man dared to openly attack the two of them with a gun just now, probably because of the chaos and disorder in Hell's Kitchen. This is Hell's Kitchen? Gwen seemed to have thought of something. Her father had told her that Hell's Kitchen was the most dangerous place in New York. It's full of violence and blood, as well as all kinds of dark sides. But Luya knows that in the Marvel universe, Hell's Kitchen is far from the most dangerous. Of course, Jean Bing, the actual underground Black Emperor here, does have great power. In the original book, Spider-Man had a long-term confrontation with Kingpin. You guys should leave quickly, Hell's Kitchen is not the place you should be. At this time, the boy behind reminded him. I know you guys outside the block are always looking for excitement, but here. Halfway through his words, the boy's sister covered his mouth. She knew very well that trouble comes from speaking. Ta. 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 Luya glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw that someone else was coming, and from the sound of it, it seemed like there were quite a few people.